Malicious Compliance roommate brought random strangers, so I pretended to be one. Who the hell are you? I looked up from my cereal bowl to find some blonde girl in last night's club dress staring at me like I'd broken into my own apartment. She was standing in the doorway of our kitchen at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, mascara smudged under her eyes, clutching her heels in one hand. I live here, I said, taking another spoonful of Lucky Charms. She blinked at me, confused. But Jake never mentioned having a roommate. Of course he didn't. Jake never mentioned anything about me to his parade of overnight guests. I was apparently just part of the furniture, like the couch he claimed as his, or the coffee table he used as a footrest. Yeah, well, Jake doesn't mention a lot of things, I muttered. The girl, I think I heard him call her Madison or Madeline or something with an M, shifted awkwardly. Do you know if he has any coffee? I have a meeting at 9 a.m. Third cabinet from the left, I said without looking up. This was my life now. Playing unpaid concierge to whatever random person Jake dragged home from whatever bar or dating app had caught his attention that week. 3 months of this. 3 months of stumbling into strangers raiding my fridge, using my bathroom products, and asking me where Jake keeps the spare phone chargers. The worst part. Jake acted like this was completely normal. Like I should be thrilled to share my living space with a rotating cast of confused hookups who didn't know I existed until they literally ran into me. Madison or whatever was now clattering around in the kitchen, opening every cabinet except the one I told her about. I watched her grow increasingly frustrated, checking the same empty shelves twice. I said third from the left, I repeated. This is the third from the left, she snapped, gesturing at the cabinet full of cleaning supplies. I looked over. She was counting from the right. Your other left. She shot me a dirty look but moved to the correct cabinet, finally locating Jake's precious French roast, the expensive stuff he'd specifically told me not to touch because it was for special occasions. Apparently, random Tuesday hookups qualified as special occasions, but his actual roommate who split the rent 50-50 didn't. That's when Jake finally emerged from his bedroom, wearing nothing but boxers and that stupid smirk he got when he thought he was being charming. Morning, babe, he said to the girl, completely ignoring my existence. Then he noticed her in the kitchen and frowned. What are you doing? Looking for coffee. Your. She glanced at me uncertainly, roommate told me where to find it. Jake's eyes flicked toward me for maybe half a second, the first acknowledgement I'd gotten from him in weeks, before focusing back on her. Cool. Hey, I've got class in 20, so. He let the sentence hang, the universal signal for time to leave. I watched this awkward dance play out while finishing my cereal. Madison or whatever looked hurt but tried to hide it, gathering her things with wounded dignity. Jake grabbed a piece of toast from the counter, my bread, naturally, and headed for the bathroom without another word to either of us. The girl left without saying goodbye to me, which was fine. In 24 hours, there'd probably be another one anyway. But as I sat there in the sudden quiet of our apartment, listening to Jake's shower running, something crystallized in my mind. A deliciously petty idea that made me smile for the first time in weeks. If Jake wanted to pretend I didn't exist, maybe it was time to return the favor. The next opportunity came faster than expected. That very Friday night, I was camped out in the living room binge-watching Netflix when I heard Jake's key in the door, followed by giggling and the unmistakable sound of two people trying to drunkenly navigate our narrow hallway without crashing into walls. And this is my place, Jake was saying in that voice he used when he was trying to impress someone. It's got great natural light, see? And the kitchen's fully stocked. Fully stocked with groceries that I bought, I thought bitterly. They stumbled into view, Jake with his arm around a petite brunette in a tight red dress who looked like she'd stepped straight out of a Pinterest board. She was giggling at everything he said, clearly several drinks in. Oh. She stopped short when she saw me on the couch, then looked at Jake expectantly. This was it. The moment Jake would normally pretend I didn't exist while his date stood there in confused silence. But tonight, I was ready. Jake opened his mouth, probably to suggest they go straight to his room, but I beat him to it. Oh hey, are you Jake's roommate? I asked the girl brightly, completely ignoring Jake's existence. She blinked, confused. No, we're on a date. I'm Stephanie. Nice to meet you, Stephanie. I'm Sam. I gestured vaguely at Jake without looking at him. Sorry, who's this guy again? Jake's face went through several expressions at once. Very funny, Sam. But I kept my focus on Stephanie, who was now looking between us with growing confusion. Wait, you two know each other? Do we? I asked, giving Jake the blonkiest stare I could manage. Sorry dude, you look familiar but I can't place you. Did we go to high school together or something? I'm your roommate, Jake said through gritted teeth. We've lived together for 8 months. I snapped my fingers like I was trying to remember. Oh, right. You're the guy who's always bringing people over. Sorry, I'm terrible with names. What was it again? Jack. Jason. Jake, he said flatly. Right. Jake. I turned back to Stephanie with an apologetic smile. Sorry, he brings so many different people through here, it's hard to keep track of everyone. Are you the one who used all my shampoo last week, or was that someone else? Stephanie's expression was shifting from confusion to something that looked suspiciously like offense. I've never been here before. Oh, my bad. Like I said, there's been so many. Jake's really popular. I said it like I was complimenting him, but the way Stephanie's smile tightened told me she was getting the subtext loud and clear. Jake was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Can we talk privately for a second? Sure thing, Josh, sorry, Jake. I stayed planted on the couch. What's up? He jerked his head toward the kitchen, but I just looked at him expectantly. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Stephanie cleared her throat. Maybe I should go, she said, already reaching for her purse. This is weird. No, don't go. Jake said quickly, shooting me a look that could melt steel. Sam was just leaving. Weren't you, Sam? I checked my phone with exaggerated surprise. Oh wow, it's only 10:30. Nah, I'm good. Besides, this is where I live. I smiled at Stephanie again. Jake just visits sometimes. Don't mind me though, I'll keep the TV volume down so you two can get acquainted. The look of dawning horror on Jake's face was absolutely priceless. Stephanie was looking at Jake like she just discovered he'd been catfishing her. Wait, so you don't live here? I do live here. Jake protested, his voice cracking slightly. Sam's just being helpful. I interjected cheerfully. I'm just trying to clarify the living situation. Jake's name isn't on the lease or anything, but he crashes here pretty regularly. He's got his own drawer in the bedroom and everything. That wasn't technically a lie. Jake did have his own drawer, in his bedroom, which he paid half the rent for. But the way I said it made it sound like he was some kind of semi-permanent couch surfer. His own drawer. Stephanie repeated slowly. Yeah, it's super convenient. He keeps some clothes here, a toothbrush, the basics. Really makes the whole friends with benefits thing work smoother, you know. Jake's face had progressed through several shades of red and was now approaching purple. We are not friends with benefits. I'm your roommate. I tilted my head thoughtfully. Is that what we're calling it now? I mean, whatever makes you comfortable, Jake. Labels are just social constructs anyway. Stephanie took a step back, her purse clutched defensively against her chest. Oh my god, are you two together? What? No. Jake practically shouted. Sam, stop this right now. But I was just getting warmed up. Together? Oh, we're way too complicated for labels like that. Right, Jake? I mean, we share everything, groceries, utilities, Netflix password. It's very intimate. The word intimate hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Stephanie's eyes darted between Jake's increasingly panicked face and my picture of innocent helpfulness. This is insane, Jake muttered, running his hands through his hair. Stephanie, I can explain. You know what? I don't think I need an explanation. Stephanie was already heading for the door. This is way too much drama for a first date. Wait. Jake chased after her, leaving me alone in the living room with the distant sound of their argument echoing from the hallway. I couldn't make out the words, but Jake's desperate tone and Stephanie's increasingly sharp responses told me everything I needed to know. The apartment door slammed a few minutes later, and Jake stormed back in looking like he wanted to punch something. What the hell was that? He demanded. I paused my show and looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. What was what? You know exactly what. You just scared off my date. I scared her off. I was nothing but friendly. I introduced myself, made conversation, tried to help clarify your living situation. I shrugged. Not my fault she couldn't handle the complexity of modern relationships. There is no complexity. We're roommates. Our métiers. Are we though? I asked thoughtfully. Because roommates usually introduce each other to their guests. Roommates typically acknowledge each other's existence. Roommates don't let their dates use the other person's stuff without asking. Jake opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again like a fish gasping for air. You want me to introduce you to every person I bring over? I want you to treat me like I exist in my own home, I said, my fake cheerfulness finally dropping. But since you can't seem to manage that, I figured I'd try your approach. You know, just pretend we're strangers. Jake stared at me for a long moment, something that might have been understanding flickering across his face. But then he shook his head. This isn't over, he muttered, stalking off to his room. I smiled and unpaused Netflix. He was absolutely right. This was just the beginning. The next morning, Jake was gone before I woke up, but he'd left his mark, dirty dishes piled in the sink, an empty coffee pot, and a passive-aggressive note on the counter that read, "Thanks for cleaning up after yourself, smiley face," in his aggressively neat handwriting. I crumpled up the note and tossed it in the trash. If he wanted to escalate this into full roommate warfare, I was more than ready. For the next week, an uneasy ceasefire settled over the apartment. Jake brought home fewer people, and when he did, he rushed them straight to his bedroom without lingering in the common areas. I almost thought he'd learned his lesson. Then Saturday night happened. I was studying for my abnormal psych midterm, textbook spread across the dining table, when Jake burst through the front door with not one, but 3 people, 2 guys and a girl who were all clearly pre-gaming for something bigger. This is my place. Jake announced loudly, gesturing around like he was hosting MTV Cribs. Make yourselves at home. The girl, a tall redhead with perfectly contoured makeup, immediately beelined for our kitchen and started opening cabinets. Do you have any mixers? We need to make drinks before we hit the clubs. Check the fridge. Jake called out, not bothering to mention that any mixers in there belonged to me. One of the guys, wearing a backwards baseball cap and a shirt that was definitely 2 sizes too small, plopped down on the couch and grabbed my TV remote. Yo, what streaming services do you have? Everything, Jake said proudly. Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, the works. My eye twitched. I paid for 3 of those 4 subscriptions. But it was when Baseball Cap started flipping through my carefully curated Netflix profile, the one with all my true crime documentaries and Korean dramas, that I decided the ceasefire was officially over. I closed my textbook and walked into the living room with my brightest smile. Oh hey there. Are you guys Jake's friends? The redhead looked up from where she was pouring my cranberry juice into red Solo cups. Yeah. I'm Becca, this is Tyler and Marcus. We're gonna pregame here before hitting downtown. That's so fun. I said enthusiastically. I'm Sam. I just moved in what was it, Jake? 3 days ago. Jake, who had been rummaging through what I now realized was my snack cabinet, froze with a bag of my Doritos in his hand. 3 days. Marcus looked confused. But you seem like you know where everything is. Oh, Jake gave me the full tour when I answered his Craigslist ad. He's been so helpful showing me around. I gestured at Jake, who was now giving me a look that could strip paint. Although I have to say, you didn't mention you had so many friends over all the time. The walls are pretty thin, you know. Tyler paused mid-channel flip. Craigslist ad. Yeah. I needed a place ASAP after my last roommate situation got complicated. I lowered my voice conspiratorially. Let's just say some people can't handle living with someone who has an active social life, you know what I mean. Jake's face was cycling through emotions so fast I was worried he might have a stroke. Wait, Becca said slowly, so you two just met 3 days ago. Basically. Although Jake's been so welcoming, it feels like we've known each other forever. Haven't you, roomie? I beamed at him. He even said I could use his Netflix account tonight. What was your password again? I forgot to write it down. It's... Jake's voice came out as a croak. It's password 123. It absolutely was not. Jake's Netflix password was Jake the Snake 2000. I knew because I'd seen him type it in dozens of times before I got fed up and bought my own subscription. Oh right. Thanks. I grabbed the remote from Tyler's hands. Hope you guys don't mind, but I've got a huge exam Monday and I was planning to study with some background TV. You know how it is. The three friends exchanged glances that clearly said, this is awkward and we want to leave. Actually, Marcus said, standing up, maybe we should just head straight downtown. Skip the pre-gaming. Yeah, Becca agreed, already dumping her drink down the sink. We can grab something at the first bar. Jake watched helplessly as his friends gathered their things and headed for the door, shooting him sympathetic looks like he was the victim of some terrible roommate situation. See you later, Jake. Tyler called out. Good luck with everything. The door closed behind them, leaving Jake and me alone in the sudden silence. Password 123. I asked sweetly. Really? That's the best you could come up with under pressure. Jake's hands slowly clenched into fists at his sides. You're insane, he said quietly. I'm creative, I corrected. There's a difference. You want creative? I'll show you creative. That was Jake's ominous parting shot before he disappeared into his room, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. I should have taken it as the warning it was meant to be. Instead, I went back to studying, feeling pretty pleased with myself. 3 successful interventions, 3 groups of confused strangers, and Jake was finally starting to understand what it felt like to be treated like an inconvenience in your own home. I made it exactly 4 days before Jake's revenge kicked in. It started Tuesday morning when I stumbled to the bathroom at 6 a.m., still half asleep, only to find the door locked and the shower running. This wasn't unusual, Jake had always been an early riser. But when I checked again 20 minutes later and heard giggling coming from behind the door, I realized this wasn't just Jake's normal routine. The bathroom door finally opened to reveal Jake and some brunette I'd never seen before, both wrapped in towels and looking very pleased with themselves. Oh, sorry, the girls said, not sounding sorry at all. I didn't know anyone else was up. Jake didn't even look at me as they headed to his room. Bathroom's all yours, he said casually, like he hadn't just monopolized our only bathroom during peak morning hours with his latest conquest. I was still processing this when I opened the bathroom door and nearly gagged. The entire room was thick with steam and reeked of some overwhelming floral body wash. My towels were soaking wet and crumpled on the floor, there was long brown hair clogging the drain, and someone had used up the last of my expensive face wash, the stuff I'd specifically labeled with my name. But the real kicker. My toothbrush was missing from its usual spot by the sink. I found it 20 minutes later in Jake's room trash can, along with an empty tube of the whitening toothpaste I'd been saving for special occasions. Are you kidding me right now? I confronted Jake as he was making coffee in the kitchen, now fully dressed while the brunette was nowhere to be seen. Are we talking about something specific, or just life in general? Jake asked innocently, not looking up from his mug. My toothbrush, Jake. And my face wash. And the fact that your guest used our bathroom like her personal spa. Jake finally looked at me, and his smile was absolutely predatory. Oh that? Yeah, sorry. Emma's really particular about hygiene. I told her to use whatever she needed to feel comfortable. You told her to throw away my toothbrush. I told her to make herself at home. Just like you've been doing with my guests. Jake took a slow sip of his coffee. Speaking of which, Emma's coming back tonight. And probably staying through the weekend. Hope that's cool with you, roommate. The way he said roommate made it sound like a 4-letter word. I felt my jaw clench. Since when do your hookups get extended sleepovers? Since I decided to start treating my place more like home, Jake said smoothly. You know, really embracing that comfortable, lived-in vibe. Emma loves how welcoming our space is. Our space. Right. That night, Emma returned with what looked like enough luggage for a week-long vacation. She also apparently invited 2 of her friends, because suddenly our living room was full of girls doing face masks and painting their nails while a reality TV marathon blared from our television. Sam. Emma waved at me with wet purple nails when I emerged from my room around 9 p.m., hoping to grab some dinner. Come join us. We're doing a whole spa night. The coffee table was covered with beauty products, most of which I was pretty sure came from my bathroom cabinet, and they'd ordered what looked like $60 worth of Thai food that was spread across every clean dish I owned. We got extra spring rolls if you want some, one of Emma's friends offered. I'm Casey, by the way. Emma told us all about how cool you are with Jake's girlfriends hanging out here. Girlfriends. Plural. I looked around for Jake and found him in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with a beer and that same smug smile from this morning. Isn't this nice, he said when he saw me looking. Just like one big happy family. That's when I realized Jake hadn't just escalated our little war. He'd gone nuclear. The spa night from hell lasted until 2 a.m. I know because I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Emma and her friends shriek with laughter every time something dramatic happened on whatever reality show they'd been binge-watching for the past 5 hours. The walls in our apartment were thin enough that I could hear every word of their commentary, which ranged from "OMG, she did not just say that," to detailed discussions about their dating lives that I definitely didn't want to know about. When I finally heard them start to quiet down, I thought maybe I could get some sleep. Then the giggling moved to Jake's room, directly on the other side of my bedroom wall, and I realized my night was far from over. I shoved my pillow over my head and tried to pretend I was anywhere else. Wednesday morning brought new horrors. Emma had apparently claimed our bathroom as her personal beauty station, with products covering every available surface. The shower was clogged with enough hair to stuff a pillow, and she'd used my last clean towel as a bath mat. But the real surprise was waiting for me in the kitchen. "Morning, Sam." Emma chirped from her spot at our dining table, where she was eating cereal from my favorite bowl while scrolling through her phone. She was wearing one of Jake's t-shirts and nothing else, completely comfortable despite the fact that we barely knew each other. "Morning," I managed, opening the fridge to find that most of my groceries had been mysteriously consumed. The milk carton sat empty on the shelf, and my leftover pizza had vanished completely. "Oh, sorry about the food," Emma said without looking up. "We got super hungry last night. Jake said you guys share everything anyway, so I figured it was cool." I turned to look at Jake, who was buttering toast at the counter. "My bread, obviously." "Jake said that, did he?" Jake hummed, still not making eye contact. "I told Emma how generous you are about sharing. Really emphasized your open door policy." The phrase, open door policy, hung in the air like a challenge. I could practically feel him waiting for me to explode, to give him an excuse to paint me as the unreasonable roommate who couldn't handle his perfectly lovely girlfriend visiting. Instead, I smiled. "That's so sweet of you to say, Jake. I love how we're always looking out for each other." I grabbed the empty milk carton and held it up. "Since you mentioned I'm generous about sharing, would you mind grabbing some more milk when you're out today? I've got back-to-back classes and won't have time to shop." Jake's toast buttering slowed. Sure. I guess. Thanks." "Oh, and Emma." I turned to her with my brightest smile. "I noticed you've been having trouble with the shower drain. It's been acting up lately, sometimes it backs up and floods the whole bathroom floor. You might want to keep an eye on that." Emma's face scrunched in confusion. "It seemed fine yesterday." "Yeah, it's super unpredictable. Jake can tell you, last week it backed up so bad we had sewage water everywhere. Right, Jake?" Jake was now gripping his butter knife like a weapon. "I don't remember that." "Really? Huh. Maybe you were at class when the maintenance guy came. Anyway, Emma, just keep an ear out for any gurgling sounds. That's usually the warning sign before everything goes to hell." I grabbed a granola bar from the cabinet, one of the few items that had survived last night's feeding frenzy, and headed for the door. "Have a great day, you too. Try not to break anything while I'm gone." I made it halfway to campus before I realized what I'd just done. Jake wanted to escalate. Fine. But two could play the misinformation game. By the time I got home that evening, armed with groceries and a plan, I was ready for whatever Jake had prepared as his next move. What I wasn't ready for was finding Emma's stuff moved into our living room like she was planning to take up permanent residence. This meant war. I stared at Emma's makeup case sitting on our coffee table like it had claimed territory. Her clothes were draped over my favorite armchair, and there was a half-empty bottle of wine on the kitchen counter that definitely hadn't been there this morning. The living room smelled like her perfume, something aggressively floral that made my eyes water. "Jake?" I called out, setting my grocery bags on the counter with more force than necessary. No answer. But I could hear voices coming from his room, multiple voices, including at least one I didn't recognize. Again. I was unpacking milk when Emma emerged from the bathroom wearing a face mask and my bathrobe. "Oh hey, Sam. Perfect timing. Do you have any of those little cotton pad thingies? I used the last ones and I really need to do my skincare routine." I blinked at her, processing the sight of this near stranger wearing my clothes in my apartment while asking to use more of my stuff. "That's my bathrobe." Emma looked down like she just noticed. "Oh. Jake said I could grab whatever I needed. It's super soft, where'd you get it?" "Christmas present from my mom," I said flatly. "Ah, that's sweet. She has great taste." Emma was completely oblivious to my tone, already heading back toward the bathroom. "So about those cotton pads. Bathroom cabinet. Third shelf. You're the best." She disappeared back into the bathroom, leaving me standing in my kitchen wearing the same clothes I'd been in for 12 hours while someone else lounged around in my bathrobe like she lived here. That's when Jake finally appeared, followed by two guys I'd never seen before. "Sam. Perfect. Meet Derek and Austin. They're Emma's friends, thought we'd all hang out tonight." Jake was using his fake cheerful voice, the one that meant he was up to something. "Hope you don't mind a few more people. I know how much you love when I have guests over." Derek, tall, blonde, wearing a polo shirt that probably cost more than my textbooks, gave me a once-over that made my skin crawl. "So you're the roommate Emma mentioned. Jake's told us all about your arrangement." The way he said arrangement made it sound vaguely dirty. "Our arrangement?" I repeated slowly. Austin, who was shorter but equally obnoxious, laughed. "Yeah, the whole casual roommate thing. Very modern of you guys." I felt my eye twitch. "Casual roommate thing? Don't worry," Derek said with a smirk that I wanted to slap off his face. "We're not judging. College is for experimenting, right?" Jake was watching this exchange with barely concealed glee, clearly enjoying whatever narrative he'd fed these idiots about our living situation. "Right," I said slowly. "Experimenting. Anyway," Jake said quickly, probably sensing that I was about 3 seconds away from clarification that would ruin his fun, "we were thinking of ordering pizza. You cool with splitting it 6 ways?" 6 ways. There were 4 of them plus me. I was apparently expected to subsidize dinner for Jake's girlfriend and her friends. "Actually," I said, my customer service smile stretching so wide it hurt, "I think there might be some confusion about tonight." Jake's smile faltered slightly. "Confusion? Yeah, I forgot to mention, my study group is coming over at 8. We've got this huge project due tomorrow." I checked my phone with exaggerated concern. "They'll be here any minute, actually. We'll probably be up pretty late, and you know how loud chemistry students can get when we're reviewing molecular structures." This was a complete lie. I didn't have a study group, and my only class tomorrow was Introduction to Pottery. But Jake didn't know that. "Your study group?" Emma had returned from the bathroom, still wearing my bathrobe, face mask making her look like a ghost. "But we just got here." "I know, terrible timing. But you know how school is, academics come first. I shrugged apologetically. Maybe you guys could hang out somewhere else tonight. I'd hate for us to disturb your evening with all our periodic table chanting. Derek and Austin exchanged glances that clearly said they had no interest in spending their night listening to fake study sessions. Yeah, maybe we should just hit that new bar downtown, Austin said, already backing toward the door. Great idea. I said enthusiastically. Have fun. As they filed out, I caught Jake's arm. Oh, and Jake. When you get back tonight, could you ask Emma to maybe pack up her stuff? I've got my parents visiting this weekend and they're staying in the living room. Another complete lie, but the look of pure fury on Jake's face made it worth it. Your parents aren't visiting, he hissed. Aren't they? I tilted my head innocently. I'm pretty sure my mom mentioned it. You know how forgetful I can be about the details. Jake stared at me like he was trying to set me on fire with his mind. This isn't over, he said quietly. I know, I replied cheerfully. Isn't it fun? The real study group was about to begin. After Jake and his entourage left, I had about 20 minutes to figure out how to fake a study group before they potentially came back to call my bluff. I frantically texted my friend Maya from my morning lecture, bribing her with coffee and desperation to come over with anyone she could round up. I need bodies, I explained when she arrived 40 minutes later with her boyfriend Connor and 2 girls from her dorm. Just sit around my dining table with notebooks and look academic. This is about your psycho roommate, isn't it? Maya asked, dumping her backpack on the floor. The one who's been treating you like furniture. He's escalated to biological warfare, I said, gesturing toward the bathroom where Emma's beauty products had achieved complete territorial dominance. His girlfriend has basically moved in and she's using my stuff like it's a hotel. Connor, who was majoring in theater, immediately perked up. Oh, we're doing a performance. I'm in. What's my motivation? Organic chemistry student. Very passionate about molecular bonds. I can work with that. We spread notebooks and textbooks across the dining table, and I coached them on basic chemistry terms while Maya Googled study group chatter on her phone. By the time Jake's key turned in the door around 10 p.m., we had a convincing tableau of academic dedication. And that's why carbon forms 4 covalent bonds, Connor was saying with theatrical intensity as Jake and Emma walked in. Oh wow, Emma whispered, taking in our setup. They're really going hard. Jake's face was a mask of barely controlled frustration as he surveyed the scene. For college students with highlighters and energy drinks, notebooks covered in what definitely looked like real chemistry equations, thank God for Connor's perfectionist streak, and me holding court like this was exactly what I planned all along. How long do these study sessions usually last? Jake asked with forced casualness. Oh, we'll probably be here until at least 2, Maya said without missing a beat. Maybe 3 if we get stuck on thermodynamics. Emma's face fell. 3 a.m. Sorry. I said brightly. I know it's not ideal, but finals season, you know. Jake, you understand how important good grades are, right? Since you're so supportive of my academic success. The trap was beautiful. Jake couldn't object to my studying without looking like a hypocrite, especially in front of Emma and my study group. He was stuck. Of course, he said through what looked like a physically painful smile. Emma, maybe we should give them space to focus. But where are we supposed to go? Emma whined. All my stuff is here. That's when I realized Jake's plan had backfired spectacularly. He'd encouraged Emma to spread her belongings around the apartment to irritate me, but now her territorial expansion was trapping them. They couldn't comfortably hang out in Jake's tiny bedroom with all her things scattered around the living room, but they also couldn't use the common areas without disturbing our fake study session. We could go back to my place, Emma suggested reluctantly. But my roommate has her boyfriend over and they're super loud. Jake's jaw twitched. I could practically see him weighing his options, admit defeat and spend the night elsewhere, or try to wait us out and hope we'd wrap up early. Actually, Connor said, really getting into character now, we should probably take a quick break. All this molecular bonding is frying my brain. He stood up and headed straight for the kitchen, making himself completely at home. Maya followed, opening the fridge like she belonged here. Jake, I said sweetly, would it be okay if my friends grabbed some snacks? I know how generous you are about sharing food. The look Jake gave me could have dissolved metal. But with Emma watching and my study group acting like they owned the place, he was completely trapped. Sure, he said flatly. Help yourselves. This was going even better than I'd planned. Maya had apparently decided that our fake study group needed to be as authentic as possible, which meant she was now genuinely trying to quiz everyone on chemistry concepts she was Googling in real time. Okay, so if carbon has 4 valence electrons, she announced loudly enough for Jake and Emma to hear from his bedroom, and hydrogen has 1, then methane should have 4 hydrogen atoms bonded to 1 carbon. Connor declared triumphantly, like he'd just solved world hunger. I had to hand it to them, they were really selling it. Emma kept poking her head out of Jake's room every 20 minutes, looking increasingly frustrated as our study session showed no signs of winding down. Jake had given up all pretense of patience and was now openly glaring at us from the kitchen whenever he emerged to get water or use the bathroom. The real genius was when Maya's friend Jessica, who was actually a chemistry major, started drawing elaborate molecular diagrams on my whiteboard. Suddenly our fake study group had visual aids that looked legitimately academic. You know what? Emma finally said around 11:30, appearing in the living room wearing regular clothes instead of my bathrobe. I think I'm just going to head home. Are you sure? Jake asked, but there was relief in his voice. Even he was getting tired of being trapped in his own bedroom. Yeah, this is just a lot, Emma said, gesturing vaguely at our setup. And I have an early class tomorrow anyway. She started gathering her things from around the apartment, makeup from the bathroom, clothes from the chair, that wine bottle from the counter. I watched with deep satisfaction as she packed up her temporary invasion of my space. Sorry about the noise. I called out cheerfully as she headed for the door. Chemistry waits for no one. Right, Emma said weakly. Good luck with your molecules. The door closed behind her, and I felt a surge of victory. 1 down. But Jake didn't leave. Instead, he planted himself at the kitchen counter with a beer and his laptop, clearly planning to wait us out. Every few minutes, he'd make some kind of noise, clattering dishes, opening and closing cabinets, or typing unnecessarily loudly, like he was trying to disturb our concentration. Wow, Connor whispered to me during our next fake break, your roommate really doesn't want us here. Yeah, he's not great with boundaries, I murmured back. That's when Jake decided to escalate. Hey Sam, he called out from the kitchen, voice dripping with false friendliness. Since your study group is going so late, I figured I'd invite a few people over too. Hope that's okay. My blood ran cold. A few people? Yeah, just some friends from my marketing class. We've got this presentation to work on. Jake's smile was absolutely predatory. I know how much you support academic success. He was using my own words against me. Brilliant and infuriating. When are they coming? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Jake checked his phone with exaggerated casualness. Should be here any minute, actually. Hope your study group doesn't mind some company. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. Maya shot me a panicked look. How many people are we talking about? Jake opened the door to reveal not the 2 or 3 people I'd been dreading, but what looked like half his marketing class. 6 people poured into our apartment, carrying laptops, poster boards, and enough energy drinks to power a small city. Everyone, meet Sam and her study group. Jake announced with obvious glee. Hope you don't mind sharing the space, we've all got important work to do. Our quiet, controlled fake study session suddenly became absolute chaos. Jake's marketing friends immediately took over the living room, spreading presentation materials across every available surface and talking at volumes that made actual studying impossible. I looked at Maya, who looked at Connor, who looked at me with an expression that clearly said, what have you gotten us into? Jake had just turned our apartment into an academic battlefield. And I was starting to realize I might be outgunned. The marketing group was loud. Aggressively, obnoxiously loud. They'd commandeered our couch and coffee table, spreading poster boards and laptop cables everywhere while discussing their presentation on disruptive brand strategies at volumes that suggested they thought the rest of the building needed to hear their insights. So if we position the product as lifestyle adjacent rather than utility focused, one girl with perfectly straightened hair was practically shouting, we can tap into the aspirational consumer mindset. Maya shot me a look that clearly said, I didn't sign up for this, while Connor was staring at the marketing students like they were an alien species he was studying for an anthropology project. Jake, meanwhile, was in his element. He'd positioned himself right between the two groups, laptop open, acting like some kind of academic diplomat managing shared workspace negotiations. This is perfect, he announced to nobody in particular. Both groups can feed off each other's energy. Very collaborative learning environment. The girl with the straight hair, I think I heard someone call her Madison, looked over at our chemistry materials with obvious disdain. Are you guys still working on homework? We're developing actual marketing campaigns for real clients. Jessica, my actual chemistry major friend, bristled. We're studying molecular orbital theory. It's slightly more complex than making PowerPoint slides about selling energy drinks. PowerPoint slides? Madison's voice pitched higher. This is a comprehensive brand strategy presentation worth 40% of our final grade. Ladies, Jake interjected with fake peacemaker energy, there's room for everyone to succeed here. Sam, your group doesn't mind sharing the space, right? You're always so accommodating. I felt trapped. If I objected, I'd look petty in front of my friends and Jake's group. But if I didn't, our fake study session was about to collapse under the weight of marketing jargon and poster board chaos. That's when Connor, bless his theatrical soul, decided to lean into character. Actually, he said, standing up with academic authority, we're at a critical juncture in our thermodynamics review. Sam, didn't you say we needed to practice those equations out loud? You know, for retention. I caught on immediately. Right. The vocal repetition method. Very effective for memorizing molecular formulas. Maya was already pulling up random chemistry equations on her phone. Should we start with the basic organic compounds? Excellent idea, Connor declared. Then, in a voice loud enough to cut through the marketing chatter, he began, methane. CH4. For hydrogen atoms covalently bonded to one carbon atom. Jessica jumped in without missing a beat, ethane. C2H6. 2 carbon atoms with 6 hydrogen atoms. Propane. Maya shouted, reading off her phone. C3H8. 3 carbons, 8 hydrogens. The marketing group slowly stopped talking, staring at us like we'd lost our minds. We were essentially yelling chemistry formulas at each other like some kind of academic boot camp. Butane. I bellowed, getting into the spirit. C4H10. Madison looked horrified. Are you serious right now? We can't work with people screaming random letters and numbers. It's not random, Jessica said with offended dignity. It's organic chemistry. And we were here first. You were here first. Another marketing student, some guy wearing a backward baseball cap, laughed incredulously. Jake lives here. And so does Sam, Connor pointed out reasonably. Equal roommate rights, equal study space access. Jake's face was cycling through emotions as he realized his plan to overwhelm us with numbers had backfired. The marketing group was now looking at him like this was his fault for not warning them they'd be sharing space with what appeared to be unhinged chemistry fanatics. Maybe we should just go to the library, Madison suggested, already starting to pack up her materials. No, wait. Jake said desperately. We can make this work. Sam, maybe your group could study more, quietly. I looked at my fake study group, then at Jake's increasingly frustrated marketing team, and smiled. Sorry, Jake. Science waits for no one. Pentane. C5H12. The academic warfare was just getting started. The marketing group lasted exactly 12 more minutes before they packed up and left, muttering about finding a quieter workspace and shooting Jake dirty looks like this whole situation was his fault. Which, to be fair, it absolutely was. Hexane. C6H14. Connor was still bellowing chemical formulas as Madison and her friends filed out, because apparently he decided our fake study group needed to maintain character consistency until the bitter end. Jake stood in the sudden quiet of our apartment, surrounded by the scattered remains of his failed counterattack, a few forgotten marker caps, some crumpled sticky notes, and what looked like the marketing group's entire brainstorming session abandoned on our coffee table. "You can stop now," he said flatly. "They're gone." "Stop what?" I asked innocently. "We're in the middle of reviewing hydrocarbon chains. This is exactly what I told you we'd be doing." Maya was trying not to laugh as she pretended to take notes on Connor's increasingly dramatic recitation of chemical compounds. Jessica had actually gotten interested in a fake lesson and was now drawing legitimate molecular structures on the whiteboard. "This is insane," Jake muttered, but I could see something else flickering in his expression. Not just frustration anymore, something that looked almost like grudging respect. "What's insane is you thinking you could out-petty me," I said, finally dropping the innocent act. "I've been dealing with your inconsiderate roommate behavior for 8 months. You think 1 week of Emma camping out in our living room was going to break me?" Jake stared at me for a long moment. Then, to my complete surprise, he started laughing. Not bitter, sarcastic laughter. Actual, genuine amusement. "You got a fake study group to yell chemistry formulas at my marketing friends until they fled," he said, shaking his head. "That's actually pretty impressive." Connor straightened up with obvious pride. "I've been working on my academic intensity. Very method actor approach." "It showed," Jake said dryly. Then he looked back at me. "Okay, you win this round. But you realize this whole thing has gotten completely out of hand, right?" I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. "You're the one who escalated it to chemical warfare." "Chemical warfare?" Maya repeated. "Is that what we're calling this?" "Emma used all of Sam's face wash and threw away her toothbrush," Jake admitted, looking slightly sheepish for the first time since this whole mess started. "I may have encouraged the property destruction." Jessica looked up from her molecular diagrams with horror. "You threw away someone's toothbrush? That's biological warfare, not chemical." "See?" I gestured at Jessica. Even the actual chemistry major knows that was crossing a line. Jake ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking tired instead of antagonistic. "Okay, maybe I went a little overboard with the Emma situation." "A little overboard?" I repeated. "She was using my bathrobe. My mom gave me that bathrobe." I know. That was." Jake paused, seeming to actually think about it for the first time. "That was pretty awful of me. The bathrobe thing especially. The admission hung in the air between us." Maya and Connor were watching this exchange like it was the season finale of their favorite drama, while Jessica had become completely absorbed in drawing what looked like caffeine molecules on the whiteboard. "So where does this leave us?" I asked carefully. Jake looked around the apartment, at the scattered remains of both our fake academic sessions, at my friends who were still sitting at our dining table like they belonged there, at the general chaos we created in our war of roommate attrition. "I guess it leaves us figuring out how to actually live together," he said finally. "Instead of just existing in the same space while pretending the other person doesn't matter." It wasn't exactly an apology. But it was something. "Does this mean no more random overnight guests treating our apartment like a hotel?" I asked. "Does this mean no more fake study groups ambushing my actual friends?" Jake countered. I considered this. "That seems fair." Connor raised his hand. "Can I still come over to practice dramatic chemistry recitations? Because I'm really getting into this character." We both stared at him. "What?" Connor shrugged. "Heptane. C7H16. Maybe some wars were worth fighting after all." The truce lasted exactly 4 days. I should have known it was too good to be true when Jake actually introduced me to the girl he brought home Thursday night, a sweet psychology major named Lily who asked permission before using our bathroom and brought her own towel. For a brief, shining moment, I thought we'd actually figured out how to be functional roommates. Then Friday happened. I came home from my afternoon pottery class to find our apartment transformed into what looked like a pre-gaming headquarters for half the campus. Music was blasting from Jake's Bluetooth speaker, there were red Solo cups covering every surface, and at least 15 people I'd never seen before were crammed into our living room. "Sammy!" Jake shouted over the noise when he spotted me in the doorway, clearly already several drinks in. Perfect timing. "Come meet everyone." The crowd of strangers turned to stare at me like I was some kind of exotic zoo animal. I was still covered in clay dust from class, wearing my rattiest jeans and an old t-shirt, while they all looked like they'd stepped out of a college recruitment brochure. "This is my roommate," Jake announced with drunken enthusiasm, throwing an arm around my shoulders that I immediately shrugged off. "The one I was telling you about." My stomach dropped. "The one you were telling them about?" "Yeah, you know." Jake gestured vaguely, alcohol making him louder and less careful than usual. "How you're always doing weird stuff. Like that time with the fake study group and the chemistry yelling." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd, and I felt my face burn with embarrassment. Jake was telling our roommate war stories like they were entertaining anecdotes, turning my strategic victories into punchlines for his drunk friends. Or when she pretended not to know who I was. Jake continued, oblivious to my mortification. Just stood there acting like I was some random stranger. It was insane. More laughter. Someone in the back shouted, "That's actually hilarious," and I wanted to disappear into the floor. "Jake," I said quietly, but he was too drunk and too caught up in his storytelling to notice my tone. "And then there was the whole thing with Emma and the bathrobe." "Jake, stop." My voice cut through the music loud enough that several people turned to look at me with sudden interest. But Jake was on a roll now, feeding off the crowd's attention. "Sam gets so weird about boundaries. Like, it's just a bathrobe, you know." But she acted like Emma committed some major crime by borrowing it. The laughter this time had an edge to it, the kind of mean-spirited amusement that comes from judging someone else's overreaction to something that seems trivial from the outside. "It was my mom's gift," I said, hating how defensive I sounded. "See?" Jake gestured at me like I was proving his point. "Weird about boundaries." That's when I realized what was really happening. This wasn't just Jake being drunk and thoughtless. This was revenge, served cold and public. He was turning me into the uptight, unreasonable roommate in front of an audience, rewriting our entire conflict to make himself look like the cool, easygoing victim of my bizarre behavior. And his friends were eating it up. "Where's your bathroom?" some girl with perfectly contoured eyebrows asked, already heading toward the hallway without waiting for an answer. "Second door on the left." Jake called out. "Just don't touch anything," Sam's particular about her toiletries. The crowd erupted in fresh laughter while I stood there, clay-stained and humiliated, watching Jake turn our private roommate struggles into public entertainment. The war was officially back on. But this time, Jake had just made it personal. I retreated to my room while Jake's impromptu party raged on, but the thin walls meant I could hear every word of his ongoing character assassination. He was really getting into it now, embellishing our conflicts for maximum comedic effect. So then she starts yelling chemical formulas at my marketing group. Jake's voice carried clearly over the music. Just screaming methane. Ethane, like some kind of science robot. The roar of laughter that followed made my jaw clench. He was making me sound completely unhinged. I tried to focus on homework, but every few minutes someone would bang on my door asking where we kept the bottle opener, or if they could use my phone charger, or whether it was okay to move my stuff off the dining table to make room for their drinking games. Each interruption came with barely concealed smirks, like they were all in on some joke about the weird roommate hiding in her room. The final straw came around 9 p.m. when I emerged to grab some food and found two of Jake's friends rifling through our kitchen cabinets. "Where does your roommate keep the good snacks?" one of them asked the other, completely ignoring the fact that I was standing right there. Jake said she's got some expensive chocolate hidden somewhere, the other replied, opening my designated cabinet without permission. "That's my food," I said firmly. They both turned to look at me like I just confirmed everything Jake had told them about my unreasonable attitude. "Relax," the first guy said with a condescending smile. "We're just looking for something to eat." Jake said you guys share everything. Jake lied. The guy's eyebrows shot up. "Wow, okay. Territorial much?" I felt something snap inside me. Jake had spent the evening painting me as the problem roommate, and now his friends were treating me like an unwelcome guest in my own home. But if Jake wanted to play the victim, I could work with that. "You know what?" I said, switching to my sweetest customer service voice. "You're absolutely right. I am being territorial. In fact, I'm being completely unreasonable about a lot of things lately." Both guys looked confused by my sudden change in tone. "Like how I've been unreasonable about asking Jake to give me a heads up before throwing parties in our shared apartment," I continued, raising my voice just enough to carry into the living room. "And how unreasonable I was to expect his girlfriend not to use all my beauty products without asking." The music seemed to get a little quieter, like people were starting to listen. "And I was so unreasonable when I got upset about strangers going through my personal belongings," I said louder, looking pointedly at the guy who still had my cabinet door open. I mean, what kind of terrible roommate expects basic respect in her own home? Now I definitely had an audience. Several people had wandered into the kitchen, drinks in hand, clearly sensing drama. "But you know what the most unreasonable thing is?" I asked, my voice carrying clearly into the living room where Jake was probably starting to realize his entertainment was about to backfire. "How unreasonable I'm being by not calling campus security about the noise violations, or the fire marshal about overcrowding, or our landlord about unauthorized parties that violate our lease agreement." The kitchen had gone completely silent. "But hey," I shrugged with exaggerated casualness, pulling out my phone, "if Jake thinks I'm already the unreasonable roommate, I might as well lean into it, right? I wonder what the non-emergency line for campus security is." That's when Jake came rushing into the kitchen, his face pale despite the alcohol flush. "Sam, what are you doing?" I looked up from my phone with innocent surprise. "Just being unreasonable, Jake. Isn't that what you wanted?" The party suddenly didn't seem nearly as fun anymore. The threat of campus security worked like a fire alarm. Within 15 minutes, Jake's party had dissolved into a stream of suddenly sober college students making excuses about early classes and prior commitments. I watched from the kitchen as they filed out, shooting nervous glances in my direction like I might actually follow through on calling the authorities. Jake stood in our now empty living room, surrounded by the wreckage of red Solo cups and chip bags, looking like he'd just watched his social reputation evaporate. "That was low," he said once the last person left. "Lower than turning our roommate conflicts into entertainment for your drunk friends." I shot back, finally letting my anger show. "You spent the entire night making me sound like some psychotic control freak. I was just telling stories. You were humiliating me." My voice cracked slightly, and I hated how hurt I sounded. "You took every private conversation, every compromise we've struggled with, and turned it into a joke. In front of strangers, Jake." Jake's defensive posture shifted slightly. "I didn't think. I mean, they were just funny stories about roommate stuff." "Funny stories?" I stared at him incredulously. "You made me sound completely unreasonable for wanting basic respect in my own home. And then your friends started going through my stuff because you told them I was just being territorial about my own belongings." The apartment felt suffocating in the sudden quiet. Jake kicked at an empty cup, sending it skittering across the hardwood floor. "Okay, maybe I went too far with the storytelling," he admitted reluctantly. "But threatening to call security? That could have gotten me in serious trouble with housing." "Good." I snapped. "Maybe you'd finally understand that actions have consequences. You can't just do whatever you want and expect me to smile and take it." That's when Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted from frustrated to something approaching panic. "Shit," he muttered. "What now?" Jake held up his phone, showing me a text thread that was blowing up with messages. "Emma's asking why everyone's talking about some drama at my apartment. And Madison from the marketing group is asking if I'm okay after my roommate situation got out of control." I felt a cold pit form in my stomach. "What are you saying?" "Words getting around campus," Jake said, scrolling through what looked like dozens of messages. "People are talking about tonight. About you threatening to call security, about our whole thing." My phone buzzed too. A text from Maya. "Girl, did you really threaten to narc on Jake's party?" It's all over everyone's Instagram stories. Then another from Connor, "Are you okay? Someone posted about you having a meltdown at your apartment." "Oh God," I whispered, grabbing my phone to check social media. Sure enough, there were already posts about crazy roommate drama and that girl who lost it over a party. Someone had even posted a video, just a few seconds of me in the kitchen talking about calling security, but completely stripped of context. "This is a disaster," I breathed, watching the comments pile up on the video. Most of them were calling me uptight, controlling, a buzzkill. Jake was dealing with his own social media storm. Derek's asking if I need help dealing with my living situation. And someone from my marketing class is offering to let me crash at their place if I need to escape the crazy roommate. We stood there in our destroyed apartment, both staring at our phones as our private conflict became public spectacle. The war between us had just spilled over into something much bigger and potentially more damaging than either of us had anticipated. "We have to fix this," I said quietly. Jake looked up from his phone, his face grim. "How exactly do we fix this?" I didn't have an answer. But I was starting to realize that some victories weren't worth winning. The campus drama reached peak toxicity by Monday morning. I couldn't walk to class without overhearing whispered conversations about that psycho roommate or getting pitying looks from people who'd apparently decided I was some kind of unhinged control freak. Someone had even made a TikTok about red flags and roommates that featured audio from the party video. Jake wasn't faring much better. I'd heard him on the phone Sunday night trying to convince Emma that our apartment wasn't actually a war zone, and apparently half his friend group was treating him like he needed an intervention to escape his toxic living situation. By Tuesday, we were both miserable, exhausted, and trapped in an apartment that felt like a pressure cooker of resentment and regret. That's when Maya showed up at our door with coffee and a solution I never saw coming. "You two are idiots," she announced, pushing past me into the apartment where Jake was stress-eating cereal at the kitchen counter. "But lucky for you, I'm a communications major who's been watching this train wreck with professional interest." Jake looked up warily. "What's that supposed to mean?" Maya set down coffee for both of us and pulled out her phone. "It means you're both getting destroyed online for the wrong reasons, and I know how to fix it." She showed us her screen, a perfectly edited TikTok that she'd apparently made without telling us. But instead of more drama, it was Jake and me from last Friday, during our fake study group showdown. Someone had been filming from outside our apartment window, and Maya had gotten the footage. "Watch," she commanded. The video showed Jake's marketing friends setting up their presentation while Connor yelled, "Methane. CH4, in the background. But Maya had edited it to look like an absurd comedy sketch, complete with dramatic zoom-ins on confused faces and perfectly timed music cues that made the whole thing look intentionally hilarious. The caption read, "When you and your roommate are both extra AF but make it work, face with tears of joy, #roommate goals, #chemistry versus marketing, #college life." "It's got 50,000 views and counting," Maya said proudly. "And look at the comments. Instead of calling us crazy, people were dying laughing. This is the kind of chaotic energy I need in my life. The dedication to the bid is sending me. These roommates are actually friendship goals." "You reframed the entire narrative," I said, staring at the screen in amazement. "That's what good PR does," Maya shrugged. "Instead of crazy roommate drama, now you're hilariously extra roommates who commit to the chaos. Much better brand." Jake was scrolling through the comments with something approaching relief. "People think we were doing it on purpose. Like, as a joke." "The best comedy comes from truth," Maya said sagely. "You two have been accidentally hilarious this entire time. I just helped everyone else see it." I looked at Jake, who was still reading comments and actually starting to smile. "So we're not campus pariahs anymore. You're campus legends," Maya corrected. "Emma already texted Jake asking if you guys can teach her and her roommate your comedy routine." That's when it hit me. Maya hadn't just fixed our PR problem, she'd given us a way forward. Instead of being roommates who barely tolerated each other, we could be roommates who turned our differences into something actually fun. "So," I said carefully, looking at Jake. "Want to make a pact to be intentionally ridiculous instead of accidentally awful?" Jake grinned, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in weeks. "Only if you promise to keep yelling chemistry formulas at my friends. Apparently that's my signature roommate feature now." "Deal. But I get veto power on bathroom product sharing." "Deal." Maya raised her coffee cup. "To weaponized chaos and viral fame. Sometimes the best way to end a war is to turn it into performance art."